The Nintendo Switch version of Digimon Story Time Stranger launches this week. In fact, depending on when I release this, it might be releasing today or tomorrow. But I've been getting a lot of questions about Time Stranger on Switch and Switch 2, the differences, and especially a lot of questions about the DLC. So if you're considering picking up Time Stranger on Switch or Switch 2, this is the definitive video to check out to make sure you're ready to make your purchase. What is up, digital companions? My name is Karn EX and welcome back to Time Stranger launch week. Yes, Digimon Story Time Stranger has launched or is about to launch on the Switch and the Switch 2. Total clarification, not a sponsored video. It also, of course, with it brings an update for all platforms, PC, PS5 and Xbox, as well as Switch and Switch 2, that adds some great new features to the game. Terriermon Assistant is being added as a mode change for Terriermon. I will be live streaming a Terriermon Assistant run through. We're getting a photo mode that's a little bit rudimentary, but it's nice that it's being added. Fixes to the Digifarm so that you can actually see your evolution conditions in the Digifarm rather than having to back out. And of course, graphic mode options. A performance mode that targets a 60 FPS frame rate and a 4K HDR mode that goes up to 30 FPS if you want more graphical fidelity. But a lot of people are trying to buy the Switch 1 and Switch 2 versions and aren't really sure which one they should get. Now, obviously, if you've only got a Switch, your option is the Switch version. But if you've got a Switch 2, it's not as simple as just buying the Switch 2 version of the game. You totally can. There are SKUs of Time Stranger on Switch 2, but because of Nintendo's pervasive problem with having game cards of a certain size, this is another game key card. But savvily for the consumer, Bandai Namco has actually been pretty pro-consumer in this instance, because if you buy the Switch 1 version physically, it is the full game of Digimon Story Time Stranger. So obviously you can put it in your Switch 1, you've got a physical version of the game that will last forever. However, as a little bit of an extra cool thing, if you put your Switch 1 cartridge into a Switch 2, you will automatically qualify for a free update that changes your Switch 1 version to the Switch 2 version with the graphic and performance modes, enhanced general fidelity and things like that, which is awesome. Some notes on save data here. If you use the regular Nintendo Switch version of Time Stranger, you can transfer your save data to the Switch 2, and vice versa. If you have the Switch 1 cartridge and you've been playing in a Switch 2, you can transfer your save data back to the Switch 1. This to me instantly makes the Switch 1 physical version the optimal version to buy. It's a physical cartridge, you get to keep your game for basically forever until the card explodes or whatever, and the save data is transferable between Switch 1 and Switch 2, so if you're in a household that has a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 and you share, you can always go back to your Switch 1 to play the game. But if you buy the Switch 2 version of the game, obviously it can't be launched on the Switch 1, and you cannot transfer your save data from Switch 2 back to Switch 1. So already I would say if you like physical games and you want more options, I would absolutely buy the physical Switch 1 version of the game and then just play it on your Switch 2 if you've got one. Even if you don't have a Switch 1, this is still the best way. Now, I do want to also clarify there is not save progression across different platforms. Your PS5 save cannot be transferred to your Switch, so if you've already got a lot of hours on the PS5, Xbox or Steam, you're gonna have to start all over again on the Switch. But if you've been looking for a portable option for Time Stranger, this is definitely one of them. I played on my Steam Deck at launch, but not a lot of people have those, I get that. But I do know there is a huge chunk of Switch-only consumers who are finally getting to play this game, which is awesome. Alright, let's talk about DLC. So, Digimon Story Time Stranger on Switch, of course, has the exact same DLC as the initial launch versions. You've got your pre-order Black Abumon and Agumon, which you can probably just buy on the eShop anyway, and then you have got, most importantly, the 3 DLC waves related to Parallelmon. If you want to deep dive into every single piece of DLC for Time Stranger, I made a video when the game was coming out, and all of the same things apply just to the Switch, but the big difference is in the release for these DLCs. Now, obviously, we got the first DLC, Alternate Dimension, a couple of months after the launch of the game, and it took through into 2026 for us to get all of them. Weirdly, at launch, Digimon Story Time Stranger on Switch and Switch 2 does not come with all the DLC. First of all, it's not an Ultimate Edition, right? If you buy the game, just the basic version physically of the Switch 1, you don't get all the DLC. You do have to buy the Season Pass separately. The Season Pass, of course, does include, importantly, those 3 DLC story chapters and 15, technically 16 new Digimon. Bandai have stated that the DLC for the Switch versions will release by September of this year, which obviously it's July, that's only 2 months. However, I have it on pretty good authority that the first DLC is going to be releasing probably next week. You're not going to be waiting long to play this DLC. I think they just want a little bit of continued momentum and hype after the release on Switch and Switch 2. In fact, Future Karn here, looking at the Nintendo US eShop, it does look like we have got confirmation that Alternate Dimension will release on the 16th of July, Gakuran the 23rd of July, and Additional Digimon Pack Episode 3 Story, aka the X-Antibody Paradox DLC, were released on the 30th. So you'll have all that DLC in time for August. Weird one, but whatever. Future Karn here. We got a trailer just in time for the Switch and Switch 2 launches. A live-action Digimon trailer for Time Stranger featuring a tamer and his Digimon partners walking through areas in Shinjuku that inspired, obviously, locations in Time Stranger, and then battling against Titamon and Skullbalukimon. This is an absolutely beautiful trailer. I'm so glad they put in the effort for this. It really drives up that hype. It's like a second release all over again. And at the end of that trailer, they did confirm the same dates we saw on the eShop. So yes, all this DLC is coming out by the end of July. Nothing to worry about. But again, you will have to buy either a physical version, which I don't think they're doing outside of Asia, or upgrade on the eShop to the Season Pass or an Ultimate Edition or something like that. Check your region. It will vary by region what's available to you. But bare minimum, you're going to have to either buy each individual DLC or the Season Pass, depending on what you want. And you totally can just buy each of the DLC individually. If you only care about adding the Bancho Digimon to your game, you can just buy the Bancho DLC. I think no matter what DLC you buy, you still get Parallelmon, so that's a nice little bonus. But obviously, if you want to experience the full story of the Parallel Dimension DLC and get all 16 new Digimon, you're going to have to get that Season Pass, or I guess buy them individually. I don't know why you do that though, save some money. There are a couple of things you can't just buy whenever you want though, and this is where the physical version of Time Stranger outside of Japan being just the base game on Switch 1 and 2 gets a little bit disappointing. First of all, the Cyber Sleuth costumes that you can get in-game, unlike the other costumes, are only on the Deluxe and Ultimate Edition of Time Stranger. As far as I know, you cannot upgrade your cartridge version of Time Stranger on Switch into a Deluxe or Ultimate Edition, but you can check the store once the game comes out to double check that. But basically, if you do want the Cyber Sleuth costumes, you will need to buy the digital version of the Deluxe or Ultimate Edition, and similarly, with Agumon Bond of Bravery and Gabumon Bond of Friendship, you can only get early access to them via the Ultimate Edition. However, you can just unlock them in the game regularly, just much later in the game than if you got the Ultimate Edition. I played through with them in the Ultimate Edition, and you really don't need them. In addition to that, there is the Golden Moai statue for the Digifarm, which is apparently part of the Season Pass, so as long as you get the Season Pass, you can get it. The Golden Moai does literally nothing. It's just an item you can put on your Digifarm to stunt on people. It really annoys me. To the future of Time Stranger, though, of course, we do have the expansion-style DLC coming out in 2027. I've been asked this by people who already have the game and people looking to buy it on Switch and Switch 2. No, this is not included in the Season Pass. It's not included in the Ultimate or the Deluxe Editions or anything like that. This DLC coming out in 2027 will cost us extra money. I don't know why anyone would think that it wouldn't. I mean, it'd be lovely if it did, but yeah, this is going to be an additional cost. So that's something to look forward to in 2027 when that new DLC comes out. There is also a demo, of course, available of Time Stranger on Switch 1 and Switch 2, so you can go check out the performance for yourself. The Switch 1 version is definitely lacking a little bit. I really didn't think they'd even bother putting it on Switch 1 because they didn't bother putting it on PS4 or even Xbox One. I mean, I'm glad that they got it to work, but you can definitely see some roughness. But if you're a Switch 1 player, that's all you've got. This is definitely a fine way to play Time Stranger, but of course the Switch 2 version is really enhanced in a nice way with those performance and quality modes and more. HDR in a Digimon game, who saw it happening? Also, as an aside here at the end, I just want to talk about people's perception of Nintendo and Digimon. First of all, Digimon Story Time Stranger is coming out on Switch 1 and Switch 2. Second of all, it was shown off at a Nintendo Direct. Like, it debuted, its release, its reveal was revealed at a Nintendo Direct. Nintendo this week posted this referring to Greymon and then made a post about how Digimon Story Time Stranger is coming to Switch 1 and 2. And people were very like, oh my god, Nintendo noticing Digimon, but this isn't a new thing, guys. Now, I will say, with Time Stranger being on Switch 1 and Switch 2, there has definitely been a ramping up of promotion. This clearly matters to Nintendo more. But as I posted over on Twitter, this is far from the first time that official Nintendo accounts have talked about Digimon. The Nintendo of America account has promoted Digimon Survive and World Next Order, and the Japanese account even talked about Digimon World Redigitized Decode back in 2013. There is no rivalry here. Nintendo cares about money and good product. There is no Digimon Pokemon rivalry other than in the head of tribalist fans, so don't worry, plenty of promotion. Nintendo is fine with Digimon. We can let this rest. So that's basically it. If you have any other questions that I haven't covered here on the video, let me know in the comments down below and I'll try and help. But this is really huge, I think. It's great. Obviously, this isn't the first time that Digimon has been on Nintendo platforms. It's not even the first time Digimon's been on Switch 1. It's been on Switch 1 a couple of times now. Cyber Sleuth, Survive, World Next Order, I guess 3 times, and plus Aka's Memory. But it's really cool to see this happening, and now we kind of have basically every base covered. If you want the PC version for mods and things like that, and better graphical fidelity than any of the consoles, you've got that. All of the consoles levels now have performance and quality mode options, which many people wanted before the release. We've got Terriermon Assistant, we've got Digifarm upgrades and stuff like that, and a photo mode, all in a free update, bear in mind. You don't have to rebuy the game. This is for all platforms. So now I think my eyes really turn to that next DLC. I want them to start talking about that. I wouldn't expect to hear anything on the next DLC until after all of the DLC for Time Stranger on Switch releases, but that does bring us up to that kind of September Tokyo Game Show, maybe even August Gamescom time period, and even the Game Awards at the end of the year if Jeff would ever acknowledge Digimon existing. What's wrong, Jeff? Scared? I think we are now starting to look into the possibility of seeing news on that expansion style DLC, and I just hope it's coming out like January, February, March 2027 and not November 2027. Gotta keep that hype momentum somehow. Maybe they can do it with a remake or remaster of Cyber Sleuth. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my sovereign ZDK14 as well as everyone else who supports me over on patreon.com/Karn EX. No, it's a tough time for many people, but I would really appreciate it if you could go check out Patreon. Maybe chuck in a couple of bucks and help support the channel. Or you can become a YouTube channel member over here on YouTube, like my amazing YouTube channel members who hold it down. I do appreciate you all. And I'll see you next time when we go digital. Bye-bye.